everybody, and welcome to our new series, The Mining Blueprint. My name is Jacques Roux. I'm the CEO and the founder of Metalla Tutum Engineering. The series is intended to share some of our knowledge and some of our practical experience in the mining industry, and specifically in certain sectors, and that's why we decided to make the first episode about the ASM sector. It is a very interesting sector of the market and not always very well understood. ASM means artisanal and small scale mining. So, what is that? Let's see what it says here. Understanding artisanal and small scale mining. Understanding one of the world's most misunderstood industries. When people hear the word artisanal mining, they often picture someone standing in a river with a shovel and a gold pan. While that image does represent one of the forms of artisanal mining, it's only a part of the story. In reality, artisanal and small-scale mining, commonly referred to as ASM, is one of the most important and yet most misunderstood sectors in the global sector. Across Africa and other parts of the world, ASM represents one of the largest and most important portions of the mining industry. Some interesting facts. Just if one looks at the African continent, estimated numbers sit at about 10 million miners, artisanal miners, on the continent. And our first destination of choice has been Zimbabwe. So Zimbabwe represents between 500,000 and 1.5 million of those 10 million miners. So it is indeed a very large sector. Every miner supports on average between 10 and 13 dependents. So there's a massive amount of people on the African continent that make a living out of ASM. Today, responsible ASM ranges from individual miners using basic hand tools to professionally managed mining operations, where you typically find your engineers, geologists, processing plants, and fairly modern equipment. This episode explores what ASM is, why it exists, and why it plays an important role in developing mineral resources and creating economic opportunities across Africa. At MTE, these are the types of projects that we work on across Africa. So throughout the series, I'll be sharing with you some practical mining knowledge from the real-world experience we've gained. Okay, so let's look at a definition. What is ASM and does it have different parts? Yes, it does. So your typical artisanal miner uses only basic hand tools. It's predominantly manual labor, and the production volumes are historically typically quite low. When it advances slightly, it goes to semi-mechanized mining, small equipment, very small basic processing capabilities, and of course the volumes start to increase. And part of what we as MTE specialize in is to take these artisanal miners to the last stage, which is mechanized small-scale mining. In other words, proper modern equipment and engineered operation that is in commercial production and that can deliver real value. ASM can be conducted in both open pit and underground mining methods and is applied to a wide range of commodities, including gold, tin, diamonds. We'll show you a list of them just now. Although these operations are generally smaller than larger mining commercial operations, they play an important role in the global industry by developing mineral deposits that might otherwise have been underdeveloped or never developed. When you support these with proper engineering, geological understanding, capital, and mining expertise that we typically provide, these small assets normally turn into viable commercial operations and many times turn out to become quite long life mines. Interesting question. Why does ASM exist? I think the most common answer is probably that the deposits are too small. Historically, if one looks at it from a South African perspective, at least for the last 100 years plus, the objective has always been what is the next big thing. What is the next big mine that we can find, do a geological discovery, and develop a large scale mine? Many large mining companies, and it's not necessarily by any sort of omission, but the deposit sizes are just too small for the commercial requirements that the large mining companies have. So many deposits get left behind. Supporting mining entrepreneurs, one of the greatest strengths of ASM is that its lowest barriers to entry into the mining industry is exactly this space. The mining business is capital intensive. It requires money and in quite significant amounts, and it makes money in quite significant amounts. So when one looks at the ASM sector, you have a reduction in both. So yes, the money that you make is not necessarily in the volumes that the large mines do, but very importantly, the money required to set up these operations and to make them properly commercially viable is also a lot less, therefore opening the industry to many more potential players. They develop quite quickly, these assets, again, because they are small. They start off small, they don't always stay small, but because they are small at the beginning, to turn them around is quite quick. Remote and isolated deposits, again, from a logistical perspective, especially when one is working with listed companies, public money, there are certain minimum requirements that projects must meet, and accessibility and logistical support is normally a big one of them. So many of these deposits are found in literally the African bush, and not all mining operations or operators are capable of operating in these very remote locations. However, having said all of that, artisanal and small scale mining, ASM, is really more than just gold panning. There are many miners who mine typically like this, in the riverbeds or in very shallow operations, basically digging out alluvial gold and doing a very rudimentary gravity recovery. Sluices, pans, and whatever gold is free gold is what they recover and obviously sell, and that's how they make a commercial living. Modern ASM operations can include geological exploration, mine planning, drilling, blasting, excavation. All the larger mining activities are normally found in the modern ASM operations. So it's almost a process of evolution from, doing it all by hand to doing it with small machines to eventually doing it with proper machines, proper processing equipment, and of course the maximum commercial value. Many of these businesses operate on the same standards as the large mining houses, and that is one of our particular passions, is to assist the artisanal and small scale miners in that migration, in that journey from being unstructured, completely manual, completely hand driven, to a process where there's a better understanding of the geology, there's better equipment, there's access to funding. But we'll chat about that in a minute. Like I said earlier, here's a list of the typical commodities mined by this or in this ASM sector. The biggest by far is gold. Even before the gold price was as high as what it is today, the gold price has increased significantly over the recent past. So gold is even more popular today than what it has always been. Diamonds, gemstones, very popular for small scale miners. Countries like Uganda, Rwanda, where we've worked, tin, very, very popular. Also a high value commodity. Lithium, graphite, copper because of its value, and so on. So it's not only a particular commodity that gets mined this way. Many commodities are mined in the ASM sector, but of course, like I said, the biggest by far is gold mining. What is the challenges that are faced in the ASM sector? And since about 2018, 2019, we've made quite an in-depth study of the sector. We truly understand what the challenges are that these miners face. And as you can see, what is displayed on the slide, It starts off with technical and engineering expertise. Without proper geology, mine planning, and engineering, ASM operations often face low productivity and high cost, and especially safety risks. So there's a genuine issue on the technical and the engineering side. Equipment, technology, same. Hardly any use of technology other than maybe gold detectors in specifically the gold space. But other than that, very, very limited technology, very basic equipment. So there are equipment constraints that, withhold these miners from being commercially scalable and, of course, a lot more successful than what they are. Safety, environmental, regulatory, in many operations, it hardly exists. It's terrible to see. We've seen it in the riverbeds in Africa, small children, small little families all working together in the river. We're talking children, 5 years, 10 years old, shoveling mud into sluices. It's a horrific sight to see. I've seen other places where there are cyanide leaching dams. Cyanide is highly toxic, as you would know, and people are busy shoveling mud out of that, and they do not even have proper protective clothing. Some of them they don't even wear shirts, yet they're working in cyanide mud. So safety is a major issue. There's no regulatory compliance at all, or basically non-existent. And of course, the environmental impact that these operations can have can be significant. Again, the cyanide problem, a lot of these operations still use mercury in terms of extracting the gold. Mercury is not only highly toxic, it's deadly poisonous. So a lot of help that one can extend to these guys in terms of those compliance issues. When it comes to the finance side, to the money side of the business, that's probably the biggest hurdle. Because these businesses are unstructured, these assets are not well defined. Normally, they don't sit in companies, they sit in individuals' names. They don't have production records. They don't have proper HR processes, safety procedures. They've basically got nothing to offer to an investor other than the hope of maybe finding, in so many words, a gold mine. So access to finance is basically a no-show for them. We represent a lot of investment community members, and we know how difficult it is to de-risk these assets and to make them, into at least a shape and a standard that an investor can consider investing. If they were to just travel through the bush as we have and meet with these thousands and thousands of miners that you find, none of them probably will be investing any money in those operations because there's nothing to invest in. Though there's potential, you can see there's potential. People are mining, they're eating, they've got cars, they motorcycles, they get to work, they go back, they come every day, but it's not commercially investable. And of course, skills and training. Many of these miners are self-taught or taught by their peers. Like I said, it's families, so the elders teach the younger kids, but no formal training, no proper understanding of, what are we actually doing? We're just digging, and once the gold is finished, we found another hole to dig. So skills and training is another key value driver for us where one can improve these operations quite significantly. And as it says on the screen there, this is where MTE has value. We make a speciality out of this business. We have a very, very strong focus. We do various other forms of mining as well, but artisanal and small-scale mining for the last good couple of years has been our primary focus. We're almost at the end, guys. So a couple of key takeaways out of today's session. Artisanal and small-scale mining is far more common than the perception of individuals mining with hand tools. It's a diverse and dynamic sector that ranges from artisanals to professional, semi-professional operations, modern equipment, multiple minerals. And by developing these deposits that are often too small for the major mining companies, it creates a lot of opportunity, creates employment, it supports economic development. We are operators ourselves of mines like these. We are big participants in the local communities where we operate. We buy all of our spares, we buy all of our diesel, we buy groceries, we pay wages. So it uplifts, whole communities around the mine as one would expect from normal mining operations. They normally support a downstream of activities and benefits, and so does the small scale sector. When supported by responsible engineering, effective management, and sustainable mining practices, ASM has the potential to become one of Africa's most important drivers of inclusive economic growth. I'm personally a strong believer of it, that if one looks at the next 10, 15, 20, 50 years, depending on how far you stretch the horizon, in 20 years from now, these videos that we're making today will be irrelevant. People will understand small scale mining. There will be massive participation. Capital will be involved, engineering, skills, geology. It's a very young industry. People, like I said, don't understand it, but it has got massive, massive potential. So, yeah, that's the story for today. In the next episode, we'll explore why certain of these deposits are considered too small, too remote, uneconomical, maybe just not attractive to the main or the mainstream mining companies or the larger mining companies, and where and how we add value. So subscribe for practical mining knowledge and real world mining insights from our engineers at MT.